So how long were you? So did you grow up in Greenwood Lake?
I did. I moved to Greenwood Lake, not through my own choice. Obviously, my mother brought me there at the age of 10. I had originally spent the first 10 years of my life in Rockland County, in Nanuet. And then I moved to Greenwood Lake at 10 years old. And outside of going to college, I've lived there ever since.
And so what brought your mother to Greenwood Lake?
She and my father had a small piece of property that they were gifted for their wedding in the area of Greenwood Lake. And I guess for some reason she had gone there and really fell in love with Greenwood Lake. And she chose to move there and start a business there, and the rest is history.
So what sort of business was it?
It was a medical billing business.
Okay. And so what was your first impression of Greenwood Lake at 10 years old when you moved there?
It wasn't a great impression. So we moved from Nanuet, which was a big school with all kinds of sports programs. And obviously, as a 10-year-old, that's where all of my friends were. And I moved to a new, smaller school district, a smaller town where it wasn't as easy to make friends. But fortunately, I had two older brothers that I moved with. And, we stuck together and made the best of it. And, turned out to be a great place to grow up as a kid, between hiking and fishing and swimming and boating and the mountains. And, you're nestled between two ski resorts. It really was a great place to grow up. Certainly some challenges, moving to a new school district and not having the same access to sports that we had in a bigger school district, but we made the best of it and had a good time.
Which sports did you miss?
So in Nanuet, we had football programs, we had lacrosse programs, we had varsity wrestling programs and varsity sports, whereas Greenwood Lake, we didn't even have a high school. And at the time that I moved to Greenwood Lake, our option was to go to Tuxedo High School, which was a very small high school as well.
Oh yeah, that little one.
Yep, no football team. No lacrosse team, no varsity outside of baseball varsity. So you didn't have the same opportunities. But now the difference is that our kids in Greenwood Lake can go to Warwick Valley Central High School, or they can go to Chester. Both schools have football teams. They have very good sports teams and really good academics. So my time and my experience growing up is different, with different opportunities than the kids have nowadays, which I think is a great thing.
So where were you aiming? At what age did you think about what you wanted to do with yourself?
It's funny. Originally, when I was a kid, I wanted to be an Air Force pilot. And I remember going to a physical in your nurse's office at the middle school. And you did the color blindness test, the red and green test. And they said, you're slightly colorblind, red and green. I said, what does that mean? And they said, as long as you don't want to be a commercial or a fighter pilot, then you're okay. I said, all right, well, there goes that one dream. But I had no aspirations as a kid to become a politician or a town supervisor or a mayor. I wanted to be a lawyer. I went to college, was originally planning on going to law school, but then ended up just going straight to work after I graduated college. But an interesting turn of events is that I think I practiced law just as much as a town supervisor and as a mayor as you would if you were a lawyer. But I have a wider scope of law that I deal with here. And it's really been quite an interesting path.
So what were you thinking of doing? What kind of law were you thinking about doing when you thought about being a lawyer?
I don't think I actually wanted to be a lawyer. I think it just sounded like something interesting and challenging to pursue. I really had no idea of what a lawyer really was when I was going to high school or going to college. It just seemed like a smart path to take. So I went to Pace University in Manhattan, and I went for political science. And I swear the only reason I went for political science was because someone told me that I was a good debater and I was really good talking about politics. And I had no idea what that even meant when I was in high school. And even going and preparing for college, I had no idea what political science was. It just, again, made sense for the track to get into law school. And it made sense because it suited my personality, a debater, a tough personality, and certainly up on current events and history. So everything kind of just went, not because I wanted it to go that way or I had some grand plan, it just kind of coincidentally, everything fell into place. Politics just made sense, especially how I turned out to be in the political world as a town supervisor and as a mayor. It all kind of just happened by coincidence.
So in college you were already up on current events?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, in high school, I was very well studied on history. I knew a lot about politics. I followed our local elections. I voted. I think I was just interested in local government. And I don't necessarily know why, other than I just remember talking about politics with my mother at the dinner table. My grandfather, we would always talk about national events and national politics and, Republican, Democrat issues. And my house was very political and politically involved, not so much at a grassroots level, but more of just watching the news and understanding and having an opinion as an American.
And so what were the issues most talked about at your dinner table, among your family? I
would say it was very much like a Fox News style rant by my mother, a very conservative Republican mother. Yeah, my father died when I was young. He died when I was 9 years old. So my mother raised 3 boys, and I think she just had a perspective of, earning everything for yourself and working really hard. And she was very opinionated and very strong-willed and worked extremely hard. But it was, and I still tell her to this day, like, I'm not watching Fox News, Mom. I'm not gonna go to your house and watch Fox News, because I don't like the Fox News CNN dynamic. I don't like the high intensity, aggressive nature of there. So interestingly enough, I'm a Republican. I listen to NPR and I listen to the BBC more than anything else, mostly because it's calmer, and I don't like high stress situations. I like to hear things from a different perspective. I think you learn the most when you criticize yourself from the outside in, and you take other feedback. So listening to national or international perspectives of American politics is very important to me, and I find it to be quite interesting as well.
Huh. Okay, so your mother came from the pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and so that was the roots of her Republican, more right-wing kind of perspective.
Absolutely, yeah. Entrepreneur, small business owner, very much concerned about independent rights and making sure that, the government interferes with our daily lives as little as possible. And I think that's a lot of where her ideology came from.
Okay. And so where did you diverge from that, or what? So how did you happen to diverge from that?
I don't think I necessarily diverged. I have very similar political views as my mother, but I'm just not as, fierce about it. I don't subscribe to the Fox News or CNN mentality of really pushing fear onto the public. I like to read my own news. I like to gather my own facts. I like to have discussions with people from every political opinion, every walk of life. So I don't think my mother and I have varying political ideologies. I think they're very much in line, but just where we get our information from is probably a little bit different.
So at what point did you become interested in local politics or government, or running for office?
So there's a direct point in which I was kind of thrust into politics, and I remember the day. I remember what happened. My college experience was Pace University in Manhattan, and I had a choice when I had chosen to go to Pace, and the option was to either go to Westchester or go to Manhattan. And my decision to go to Manhattan was by the mere fact that I didn't want to commute over the Tappan Zee Bridge every single day and fight with traffic to go to Westchester. So what I did was I would drive to Tuxedo, which was about a 15-minute drive to the train station. I would take the train down from Tuxedo to Hoboken, which was almost an hour. I would take a PATH train from Hoboken to the World Trade Center, and then I would walk from the World Trade Center a few blocks over the island to Pace. Door to door, it was a little over 2 hours each way. So approximately 4.5 hours every day I was commuting to college. So that created some limitations for me. And some of the limitations were getting involved on campus, getting involved in the area, taking internships locally in Manhattan. It's probably for the better that I couldn't, because it ultimately led me to where I am today. And I remember taking one course, a political science course, and the requirement was a civic engagement requirement. In order to complete the class, you had to get involved civically in some way or another. It could be a campaign, it could be a local nonprofit, it could be anything where you're engaged civically within your community. And I went to the professor and said, hey, I can't stay after class and get involved in a political campaign in Manhattan. I have to commute back to upstate New York and go back there. So he suggested I get involved in a local campaign where I live. And sure enough, I contacted someone that I knew, the mayor in Greenwood Lake, and I had asked her, how would I get involved in a political campaign? She connected me with someone who became very important in my life, John Hicks, who was at the time the town attorney, a very prominent attorney for the town of Warwick, and later became a business partner of mine in a business that we developed, a political consulting firm. And John got me involved in my very first political campaign. And it was a county legislative race for Orange County legislator and covering this district, Warwick, Al Buckby. And then after that, I think that was in my junior year. And then in my senior year, John had called me. I was just starting, I was finishing off the second to last semester. So I had 2 semesters to go, and I was just wrapping up the second to last semester. And John calls me and says he was just hired by a congressional campaign, and he wanted to know if I wanted to come work for the campaign. I said, John, I'm commuting to the city. I'm going into my last semester at college. I have to finish this. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. He said, all right, see what you can figure out. Maybe you can make it work. So I went to the dean of the political science department for PACE, and I told him about the opportunity that I can get a job working on a congressional campaign for a very competitive race. And we figured out a way to turn that job opportunity into an internship. And I got 15 credits to work on a congressional campaign up here. And I also got paid on the campaign for working in that. And an incredible experience. We ended up winning the campaign. It was for Congresswoman Nan Hayworth in 2010 during the midterm election for Barack Obama. It was an incredible year, incredible time. And so we won the race. And part of my responsibilities and my requirements were to constantly have updates submitted to my professor. I was assigned the professor that would monitor my progress and what I was doing. And I would have to submit kind of a journal of what my activities were throughout the week on the campaign. And I still have it. And it's really cool to look back and see some of the things that I was doing working on that campaign. But it just seemed like everything happened by coincidence and not by design. I didn't start my college career thinking, how can I get involved in politics? It just seems one thing led to another, and it just worked out incredibly well. So moral of that story is that the one course that required me to get involved civically gave me the idea to do something up here in Warwick, get credit for it that would count toward my degree. And then that led me to my relationship with John Hicks, getting involved into another campaign, and then working in an internship that completed my requirements for a 4-year degree.
That's very interesting. I just done a couple of stories about civic engagement in the school district, so it's relevant.
Yeah.
So were there any particular things that you learned, poignant incidents in that congressional campaign, especially, I guess, if it was so who was she running against?
She was running against John Hall, who was in his second term. He was a Democrat. She was a Republican. This was during the Tea Party movement. 2010 was a very big takeover for the Republicans. So this district has always been a swing district, and it's gone back and forth, Republican to Democrat, multiple times. Congressman Maloney ultimately beat Nan Hayworth in the following election. But John Hall, who was the singer of Orleans, and things I learned from that race. I mean, I got really a good insider's perspective as to how congressional campaigns run, how they work, and it's all about money. And it was incredible and eye-opening to see the influence, the outside influence, the special interests that go into these things. And it really makes you question the integrity of all of our elected officials above, I think, this level, or maybe even above the county level, from Assembly to Senate to Congress and U.S. Senate. There's so much money and so many deals and backroom scams that are happening. It really, it jaded me to a large degree. So much so that, my mother and I were just talking a week ago about, Trump picking J.D. Vance. And, J.D. Vance was not my first pick, or, I probably wasn't even my 10th pick. And interestingly enough, J.D. Vance and I have a very similar story. We both came from very humble beginnings. I was raised by a single mother with very low means. And, we both kind of worked hard, got where we are with very little helping hand. But him serving in the U.S. Senate really makes me question his integrity and, how he got there. And I have a very jaded view of our politicians in this country, mostly because I've seen from the inside kind of what they have to do to get where they are.
So what particular money did you see being particularly influential in that race?
Specifically, it's hard to remember. It was 14 years ago, but just, PACs are dumping money in, special interests, lobbying groups are dumping money. And it's both sides, right? It's Republicans and Democrats alike are both getting this outpouring of money and expectation of support as a result of that money that comes into the campaign. So I think both sides are equally corrupted by the money that comes into these things. You have to hope as an American, as a country, that we've got some people out there, some politicians at the federal level that are above that and are not really beholden to the special interests. But I happen to think that most of them are. Mm-hmm. Whether you're Republican or Democrat, I think they're equally corrupted. Not all of them. I know there are some good ones out there, but I think a lot of them are certainly corrupted by it.
So are you interested in campaign finance reform and those sorts of?
That's a tough issue because, what you're seeing now with the public funded campaigns, right? New York State has publicly funded campaigns. I don't know if it levels the playing field at all. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I certainly think that there's too much money spent in politics. There's too much money. It's, if you look at the amount of money that's spent in these special election congressional races out in Long Island, it is baffling to think the amount of money. I think it's up to the voters. I think it's up to the people and the public to be more educated about the issues and track the bills that their representatives are pushing forward and see what's the motive behind those bills. Go to special town hall meetings and interact with them. I think I wouldn't put the burden so much on the elected officials. I would put the burden more so on the electorate, on the people, to hold us politicians more accountable. I think at the town level, at the village level, to a certain degree at the county level, we're very accountable. A professor once said to me, as he saw that I was kind of getting into politics, local politics is hand-to-hand combat. And it was very much true. I didn't know what he was talking about when he said it, but I certainly know what he meant now. Whenever I go out to get a cup of coffee in town, I'm meeting my constituents. I'm meeting the people that elected me, that I represent. When I go to get mail at the local post office or when I go to walk my dog, you're constantly seeing these people. If you're in Washington, D.C., you're generally behind closed doors, constantly making fundraising calls, trying to raise money. They're not really held accountable to the people. And I think that it's our responsibility as a public, as a member of this country, to vote, right? Our voting turnout is abysmal in this country. And I think it's our responsibility to seek out our own news sources and not just turn on Fox or CNN to find the information. I really would put the responsibility on us. Does there need to be campaign finance reform? I think definitely, but I also think that more of the burden should be on the public.
So, what sources of information beyond? I've worked in television news myself. We know, I hate to say this, but we do know that Fox has told some big ones. I don't know CNN to have told some big ones. Do you?
I don't really care for either of them.
Okay. So where should people go to look? I mean, this is actually something I'm looking into where kids are concerned, because they're on their way to vote. So where should they go for information about politics? About
it's tough, and I think you have to use multiple sites, multiple sources. I like listening to talk radio. I think talk radio is good and a little bit interesting. It's a different perspective than news media that's coming out. There are ways to look at a legislator's record. Legistorm is one way that you can do it. You can go on, if you want to look up assembly bills, you can look up by the assembly member and see what bills they've sponsored, what bills they've voted for. Not that every single individual is going to do that. I think it's hard. I think it's hard for the public to get good information. Mm-hmm. NPR is interesting because it's not funded by corporations, right? There's no corporate sponsors in NPR. Now we know that NPR is more of a left-leaning news organization than any other, and I don't blame them for doing that. But so you're only going to get so much for the 40% of the country that might be right-leaning. They're not necessarily going to hear what applies to them. But that's a really great source, and I would like to see more things like NPR that are not corporate sponsors, that are not sponsored by pharmaceutical companies, like every single CNN and Fox News ad that you see, all during COVID, sponsoring all these pharmaceutical drugs. That's a huge special interest that makes you have so much distrust to our government and what your doctors are saying when pharmacists and pharmaceutical companies are pumping in millions of dollars into the news sources that we're supposed to rely on to get information. So I think that the system is flawed in helping people get the best information possible. I think it's nearly impossible for the general public to know how to look up and figure out all the bills that have been sponsored and supported by their local members of representatives and senators. But you also have ways to contact them and reach out to them. And I think for the most part, I think most of them will get back to the public. But it's hard. And what you're doing, right? What you're doing is great. What you're doing is you're interviewing a local elected official and, asking questions and, really making me accountable and putting me on a spotlight, right? You didn't give me any pre-planned questions that I can prepare for. I even asked you if you'd have them and you said, no, we're just going to go with it. I think that's great. You're holding me accountable. And I think the more that we can do this with our elected officials, just as what you're doing here, there's no special interest here. You're not getting paid by corporate sponsors to do this. You're not, influenced by anything here. You're just doing things for the right reasons. And I think it's great.
So where did that take you from that congressional, from working for that congressional race? Where did you go from there?
So right after the congressional race, interesting story is that, and that this is another reason why I'm jaded, and I'll give you a little inside baseball on the whole campaign. The night we won, Nan Hayworth fired the campaign manager. The minute the race was called, she fired him and removed his access to all of his emails. And this was because he knew what was going on. He knew that she was not the same person that we originally met with, that we were originally motivated to get elected. There was one point right after we won the primary where we won a very competitive primary, multi-race primary, and we won. And then at that very moment, we got the attention of the National Republican Congressional Committee. And that started bringing in money. It started bringing in staffers. It started bringing in your Washington, D.C. geeks that think they know it all. And meanwhile, the people that got this candidate to this point were local people, were people like John Hicks, myself, and Charlie Banks and other guys that really worked hard to get us there. And we had these D.C. people that enamored Nan and made her feel more important and bigger and smarter and more sophisticated, and the money came in. So she kind of went toward their direction a little bit more. And I mean, at the end, she kind of gave up on the people that really brought her to that point and went to this DC power feeling of accomplishment and power and whatever else the DC atmosphere brought to her. And we all kind of just went our separate ways. We won the campaign. We got credit for winning the campaign. And it was great. None of us returned to her second campaign where she lost. If that tells you anything, I think it does. But right after the campaign, John, myself, and a couple of others who ran the campaign, we were approached by other political candidates that wanted advice. They wanted to know, how can I run for politics? How can I do this stuff? How can I get my name out there? And we decided to start a business together. So we started a consulting firm. Me, John Hicks, Michael Knowles, who you might have heard of. He's on the DWYER with Ben Shapiro. He's got a show. He's a great kid, amazing, great kid. He's probably 30-something years old now. But he's a great guy, very popular. He's on Fox News all the time. You should look him up, but he's a business partner of mine. Currently, we have a business together.
What's his name?
Michael Knowles.
Okay. Knolls?
Knowles.
Oh, okay.
And so we started a business, a political consulting firm, and we've been very successful. We've run many campaigns throughout the county, statewide campaigns, assembly campaigns, you name it. Family court judge, county court judge, the sheriff, Paul Arteta's campaign we've been involved with. And it was kind of a hobby, but it was something we loved. We all really, clicked together. We worked well together, and we started the business. And that kind of exposed me to more activities and opportunities that were in line with what I like to do. And the other cool thing that gave me, because I feel like I have a unique perspective as a politician. And what this gave me the opportunity to do was be involved with people that I wanted to be involved and work on campaigns and support campaigns for good people that would make good politicians and good elected officials. Now, obviously, Nan Hayworth, I don't think is necessarily a bad person. I think she was just corrupted by the whirlwind of influence and money and power that came with that great responsibility. And I think it was a lot. She lost sight of her original goals and lost sight of her original reason for running. But I've had the great opportunity to work with some really good people, and having this political consulting firm gives me an opportunity to help people that I think would make great elected officials. And rewind back in 2013, well, actually before that, I think 2010, January 2011, I was appointed by the mayor of Greenwood Lake to be on the village board in the village of Greenwood Lake. And I was still going to college at that time. This was a little before 2011. And 2 years later, I ran for mayor and won. And then I was elected every time since.
How old were you? When you were elected mayor?
I think I was 27 when I was first elected. And never had an opponent after I was first elected. I ran against the incumbent mayor who had been there for 6 years. And then after that race, I didn't have any opponent.